Let's talk Miami Dolphins here for a little bit. Look, there's no denying this is one of the more talented teams in the NFL, not just in the AFC, but the entire NFL. But it's clear after the way the 2023 season ended, the Dolphins needed to make some key moves at some certain areas to put this team in a position to make a deep playoff run. And based on what we're hearing out of Miami and some moves the Dolphins are making, I think it's an indication that they are putting themselves in a strong position to make that run. And I think the hiring of new defensive coordinator Anthony Weaver is putting him in a position to do just that. Let's pull up two reports that highlight two massive changes Weaver's going to do that could have a big impact. This first one is from Pro Football Network. Math was never really Vic Fangio's strong suit. He took an old school approach to running the Miami Dolphins defense. But with Fangio out and Anthony Weaver in as the Dolphins defensive coordinator, expect analytics to play a large role in the team's in-game decisions on that side of the ball. At this point in time, I think you're a fool not to listen to some of the analytical data, and there's so much positive uses of it, Weaver said. Some of it needs to be filtered, absolutely, but if you're not at this point in time, you're behind. We certainly want to make sure we're staying ahead of those trends. Translation, his door will be open to Max Mollitz, the Dolphins director of football analytics, in a way that perhaps Fangio was not. All right, so it sounds like Weaver is getting to the 21st century in terms of how the Dolphins want to run their defense, modern times. That's smart. But there's another report based on what Weaver is planning to do involving arguably the Dolphins' best defender, Jalen Ramsey. Weaver said, "You talk about prototype corners. He is that," Weaver said Thursday per NFL Media. Size, length, speed, competitiveness. The thing about him is, I think he's your ultimate chess piece. It's really smart there. So to have him just sit outside and be a field corner or boundary corner or something like that is a detriment to him. We got to find ways to move him around where he can be the most impactful, and we're committed to doing that. Ramsey moved around the least in his career last season as he lined up in an outside corner on 533 snaps, in the slot just 14 snaps, just 14. That's crazy. Free safety just twice, and in the box 53 times per PFF. All right, based on these comments from Anthony Weaver, it looks like the Dolphins did a great job in this hire, moving off Fangio, going with Weaver. Miles, I'm curious what your thoughts are, but first, Dolphins fans, as we're getting ready for the offseason, as we're getting ready for free agency, what is one position group you really think the Dolphins need to focus on upgrading more than any other? And give us that position group in the comment section below. But Miles, give me your thoughts on the hiring of Anthony Weaver and what he could potentially bring to this Dolphins defense.
Yeah, Nick, I think this is a great hire. And don't get me wrong, the Dolphins have a great defense. If you look at the metrics lined up with Baltimore, where Weaver came from, Baltimore, third best defense in the NFL statistically, Dolphins, fourth right there. And I don't think it's talent that is going to hold this defense back. I think it was some of these little things that Fangio, he's a historically great guy. He's a guy that in the past, he's had a lot of great stuff, but he really hasn't adapted, like we said, to the future. He hasn't done a lot of these things that coaches are doing nowadays or have grown up, in Weaver's case, doing, seeing in their playing careers that really helps them, get into the 21st century, as you said, the something that is, paramount in today's NFL because it's ever changing and either change or get left behind. One, the analytics. Analytics are so crucial nowadays. Everybody does it. Baltimore Ravens were on the forefront of using analytics. Weaver was in the heart of that. So he's a guy that really loves and, I think will rely on analytics to help this defense get better. Two, moving guys around. That is something that Weaver was a part of on the Baltimore Ravens that was fantastic. You look at a guy like Kyle Hamilton, played all over the field. Marlon Humphrey got put all over the field. He was outside. He was in the corner or slot corner. He was in safety. Kyle Hamilton, play up in the box, play slot corner. He played everywhere on the field all the time. If you use a guy like Jalen Ramsey, like you said, historically, traditionally, you remember Darrelle Revis Island, just a guy out there in space, locked down that side of the field, isn't really the way you want your number one star corner to play nowadays. You want him all over the field, giving you the most matchup advantages possible. Something Weaver's going to do, and something we didn't even talk about. Another piece talks about, Fangio was in the box all the time. He wasn't on the field with the guys. He's looking down. He doesn't feel the energy on the field. He doesn't know what the guys are saying down there. In this case, Weaver said, I'm going to be on the field. I'm going to call plays from the field. I'm going to know what is going on down there. While looking from the box is probably statistically the best place to watch the game from, I don't think you get that advantage of being on the field with the guys. So I think Weaver saying that as well, it just shows he is taking the small negatives in Fangio's game and really capitalizing on those and making that a part of his defensive strategy for this already great Dolphins defense. Hopefully, it'll make them better, and I think we're going to see a big difference in this defense going forward.
Yeah, because if you look at what the Dolphins need in terms of overall structure of their team, I agree with you. It's not talent. They're exceptional at talent. They've got great players on both sides of the ball everywhere. But it's their execution against those really good teams in those playoff moments that hasn't been there. And the reality is, Vic Fangio is a very good defensive coach, has had an outstanding career. He has not won a playoff game as a coordinator or head coach since he's been calling defenses since 2013. That is a really, really long time, right? That was 1 year into President Obama's second administration. That's how long ago that was. That's a long time in football. And Fangio has fallen a little bit behind the times in terms of how he likes to do things defensively. And you could see that when the Dolphins play better offenses, right? You go back to week 1 of this past season, Justin Herbert, relatively healthy Chargers, put up 34 against Miami. You go down the list, the Eagles, we saw down the stretch, the Eagles weren't really as good as people thought. They scored 31 against Miami. You look at keep going down the list here. The Ravens scored 56, Dallas scored 20, but Dolphins fans, you'll remember that Dallas's fullback fumbled at the 1 yard line as he was walking in. That's really a 27-point surrender right there. The Buffalo Bills dropped 48 earlier in the year, and of course the Bills scored only 21 against the Miami in the final game of the regular season, but they moved the ball up and down the field. And of course, the Chiefs also moved the ball up and down the field against Miami in the postseason as well. So in those big time moments, the Dolphins defense never really had a step up dominating performance. They played well and they kept their team in the game, but they never really dominated the game the way you'd think a team that had this much talent could possibly do. And I think that's what Weaver could bring to this Dolphins defense. I think it's that using a little bit of extra element, that extra analytics, that on the field energy boost, right? Moving Jalen Ramsey around. I think that's the most important thing. I think the Kyle Hamilton comparison, it's not 100% the same, but I think it's very apt because Ramsey has that ability to be that chess piece, that guy that can disrupt what offenses are trying to do. Because the Dolphins, for the most part, during 2023 with Fangio, they kind of just lined up and played and they sit there and say, hey, listen, we think our talent and a little bit of Fangio schemes will win out in the end. And against lesser competition, it did. It was dominant. But against the better competition, kind of a mixed bag, certainly not dominant. And I think that's the step the Dolphins need to take as they get ready for 2024. They need to be like the Ravens defense that had the ability to turn it on and be dominant. They needed to be like the Chiefs defense, have the ability to turn it on and be dominant. That's the element the Dolphins have been missing because we know the offense can be dominant. I mean, they're ridiculously talented when healthy. They're explosive. They're probably the top 2 offense in football, to be honest, maybe number 1. But the defense at times didn't step up to the plate. I think Weaver, based on the moves that he's been announcing, I think he looks like the perfect hire for the Dolphins going forward. And I'm excited to see what their defense brings to the fold in 2024.